Hello, good morning, and welcome to our PhD info session in biomedical engineering. Today we'll have panelists discuss our PhD program and our degree requirements. We have Dr. Lance Kam, a chair of the Graduate Studies in Columbia BME, myself, Jody Del Sol, Associate Director of Academic and Student Affairs. We have Gigi Bond, Flooring at Gould BME, and Natasha Stanislas, the Graduate Admissions Officer. If you have any questions, you can write them in the chat in the Q&A portion. Now I'll pass it off to Professor Lance Kam.
All right, thank you, Jody. Good morning, everybody. As was mentioned earlier, I'm Lance Kam, Professor of Biomedical Engineering. I run one of the laboratories in the Department of Biomedical Engineering. But my role here today is as Chair of Graduate Studies. What does that mean? I'll be a major interface between you and our department throughout the studies here. But today, my job is actually have the pleasure of welcoming you to this informational session. Next slide. And it really is on behalf of all the faculty that I'm doing this. This is a picture of us. We are a rather close-knit, well, we like to call ourselves the BME family. We get together, we get along very well. Our students are highly collaborative, and that's one of the beautiful things about the program that we have here. But perhaps let me just back up a bit with the next slide. We are Columbia BME in the city of New York. It's not always that easy. That's better. Okay, thank you. Very busy island. You know, we have Broadway, bagels, beaches, biotech. That's probably what we're most interested in here. We have museums. Part of the time we have Taylor Swift here. We got a lot of stuff happening in New York City. It's really a mix of a lot of different kind of experiences. And truly, we've been the epicenter of a lot of recent events and events really in the past. It makes for a unique experience in which to do that short period of life as a PhD student. Now, amidst that kind of like energetic chaos, I wanted to emphasize also that our program is located kind of north of this, kind of almost on the other upper end of the island. We have three main campuses that we're involved in. The most downtown on the bottom is going to be the Columbia University City of New York. This is our Morningside Heights campus, just above the top of Central Park. This is where the engineering school, our arts and science school, and most of the campus is located over there. Now, we're also expanding up to Manhattanville campus, just a little bit north, and we have the Mind Brain Behavior Institute and a new site for engineering that's being developed there. So it's an area of expansion, just one subway stop north from the main campus that could be a part of your life as you're here. The business school is there as well, so that allows us to have interactions on the entrepreneurial side to look at commercialization technologies as well. Our last campus is our medical campus, just about 5 subway stops north of there. It's a beautiful campus up near the George Washington Bridge. It's got the latest biotech assays and all the technologies you'd love to have there. These 3 campuses together, very accessible, make a unique environment where you can interact with patients. You can really focus on the medicine side of it. You can also focus on the engineering and pure academic side of it on our main campus, and also develop things from a commercial point of view. So we're in New York, but really I think the big, next slide please. I wanted to go through some of the numbers to express why, who we are. Perhaps the simplest one of these, we are ranked number 7 as a biomedical engineering department in US World News. That's top 10, that's pretty cool. But going a little bit deeper into that, we're about 28 faculty, a good size. People know each other, yet we cover a lot of ranges of different kind of expertise. And you have here our numbers in our different student populations, undergrad, masters, and the one you're looking at, the PhD program. That gives us a faculty to student ratio of about 1 to 7. With even this small size though, we have about 17 startups and about 20 million annual research expenditures going on within the department. So these are just a brief overview of some of the numbers. Next slide, please. I think the real reason and the real thing you're going to want to look at when you're looking at any PhD program is the faculty. Remember, the PhD program is a much closer interaction between the student and the PI, the laboratory. So what I encourage you to do is go through our website, take a look at what we're all working on. We've got, again, about 28 faculty over here. We tried to organize what our expertise is. Some of these are traditional, like we started in biomechanics and added imaging, biomaterials, and cell tissue engineering. These were our original categories in this. But since we started in the year 2000, we kind of expanded and kind of really defined what we're doing through these other directions: entrepreneurship, machine learning, AI. But then we also focus on different systems. Musculoskeletal was where our department had its origins, but expanded to include cardiac, neuroengineering, immune engineering, and a lot of focus now on cancer engineering going on within the department. So what I encourage you to do is take a look at the faculty, look at our web pages, what we're working on, and see is there a fit between you and the laboratory? Because again, that's where that's going to be a central part of what you do in the future. Next slide, please. Again, some of these areas, these are some of the areas that the students and faculty are involved in. Again, check out our website to find out exactly what this means in each of these categories. And that really should be the focus of your search. What am I going to be doing in terms of research? However, things go beyond that. So next slide, please. Once you have that research in hand, we want to get stuff out to change the world. What we have here, because of our proximity to a lot of venture capital and a lot of expertise in the commercialization space, we have a number of programs that help you do this. One of these is our Biomed X program, hosted by the Department of Biomedical Engineering and the Medical School. It's part of a larger network that we have called a Lab to Market Accelerator Network. This network provides training in how to turn your research into a presentation that's looking forward to commercialization, and also puts you in front of a panel of venture capitalists. So at the end of this, this quite often results in funding for pilot projects, again, to take the research out of the laboratory and put it on the path to getting into market. So this is something I encourage you to look at columbiabiomedx.com. Take a look at that one and see what the opportunity there is. It's a fantastic way of making sure that the research you're going to do has an impact on the larger world. It's part of a larger community here as well. Next slide, please. The biotech community around New York is tremendous. We have major medical centers throughout Manhattan and the 5 boroughs. You're going to see a wide range of humanity and understand the challenges and opportunities in each of these that make it all possible. So commercialization is an exciting part of the program here that I encourage you to look into a bit more. Next slide, please. Another part of our program, we have a great community. You're going to be hearing more about this, but GoBME is our graduate student organization. They do a lot of programming. Yes, social programming, but also career-oriented, and you'll hear a lot more about this in the coming slides. I'll leave it for that part. It's a fantastic group to be part of during your PhD program. We also have at the department and school and university levels DEI committees that help also with programmatic and support initiatives around the school. I think you'll be hearing about those a little bit later as well. So community here is fantastic, and we'll be happy to answer any questions about that when we get to that stage here. So I'm going to wrap up pretty soon, just in a few more slides. So next slide. I want to emphasize this is coming soon. Graduation for you folks. Early congratulations to you in advance. On the left is the Columbia graduation, how it looks for undergraduates going on to next stage careers. You may be asking yourself, why would I want to be doing what I see on the right side of this, the folks in the black puffy hats? So why am I going to stay around for a PhD? It works. It really is a transformative experience. The students you see in that picture over there, they've gone on to a wide range of careers at a level that's much higher along the professional career development path. This includes going into academia, becoming a professor, becoming a research scientist in an institute, this kind of a thing. Others have been successful getting into industry, be this from biomaterials, more AI now, pharmaceuticals. We have graduates who have gone on to many careers across the whole range. Consulting, yes, many students go down that route as well, and being in New York gives you access to a lot of opportunities in that direction. Some of our graduates have also gone into public policy, advising how to get science out from the laboratory, not just to the hospitals, but to the community. And that's becoming a bigger and bigger emphasis in what we do. So there's a lot of opportunities that are made available through the PhD program here. And the big question you should be thinking about is there a good fit for you? Do we offer what you're looking for? So next slide. As a way of figuring out is there a fit or not, I encourage you to go to to keep a tab on our website, bme.columbia.edu. We're going to have news there about events, about the faculty, about the students, our community. Down kind of the bottom of that middle, Tissue Talks. This is the weekly webinar hosted by Dr. Gordana Novakovic's laboratory that bring leaders from around the world to talk once a week on Wednesday afternoons here. So explore this website, sign up for some of these talks. I believe many of our seminars coming this term are going to be on there as well. Get to know the faculty, and I hope to see your application in the near future. And with that, I'll turn it back to Jody.
Thank you. Hi, good morning. As I said before, my name is Jody Del Sol, Associate Director of Academic and Student Affairs. I help students through the admissions process all the way through graduation. Now I'll go over the degree requirements and funding information for our students. The doctoral degree requirements: in the first year, you begin your research and your coursework, and you transition to the year 2, you'll continue your research and your coursework. Then you'll take your qualifying exam and you obtain your master's degree in your spring semester. In year 3, you continue your research and you finish up your TA requirements. Year 4, the research continues, you'll propose your proposal, and year 5, you'll go on to your thesis and you'll defend, and you'll be done. The curriculum requirements: if you're MS PhD portion, you're required to take 12 credits to be considered for full-time status. If you're in the PhD portion, you're required to register for resident units to be required for full-time status. The qualifying exam, you must have a minimum of 3.2 GPA without research credits, and students should not receive more than 2 Cs or below letter grades. And pass or fail grades do not apply towards your degree requirements. For the MS curriculum portion, a total of 30 credits, approximately 10 classes. The required courses are BME 6003 Computational Modeling Physiological Systems, 1 graduate level applied math course at the 4,000 level or higher, 4 BME graduate level courses at the 4,000 level or higher, 2 semesters of BME 9700 graduate seminar. Then we transition to the technical electives, which are 12 credits. The content should be BME related, 3 courses in Cs at the 4,000 level or higher, and 1 4,000 level or higher course at Cs or outside of Cs. You can take up to 6 credits of BME 9100 master's research, which will be applied towards your master's degree. All courses must be at the 4,000 level or higher and must be letter grade. Pass or fail grades do not apply towards the degree requirements. This is a sample of the MS schedule. In your first and second semester, you'll take 12 credits. In your third semester, you'll have 6 credits left. You can take 6 credits of BME 9500 to make you a full-time student, or you can take 2 Cs technical electives to make you a full-time student. This is just a sample of one of the MS schedules. For the PhD requirements, it's 30 credits beyond the master's degree. The required courses are 9 credits. So you'll take BME 6003 Computational Modeling Physiological Systems, 2 graduate level math courses at the 4,000 level or higher. The applied math course could be linear algebra, ODE, vector space, and statistics. 1 math class can be BME 4110 biostatistics or statistics course at the 4,000 level or higher. 2 semesters of BME 9700 graduate seminar, and 6 residence units. 2 residence units must be applied towards your advanced standing for having an MS degree. And then you go on taking your courses, which are 21 credits. You can take up to 21 credits of BME and 9,500 doctoral research to count towards your PhD degree. The doctoral qualifying exam. It's offered in January of each year. You must complete 30 credits or higher with a GPA of 3.2 without research credits calculated into that GPA. The format is an oral exam, a written evaluation of 3 papers. The suggested courses are 2 graduate level math courses at the APMA or statistics, physiology, PMA 4001, 4002, and 6003, but please consult your advisor on the courses that you should take for the exam. The MPhil requirements. You must have a 3.2 GPA, 30 credits above the master's degree, qualifying exam, and 6 residence units, and complete 2 terms of TA-ship. Now I'll pass it on to Gigi Bonding with GoBME.
Hi everyone, thanks Jody. My name's Gigi. I'm a third year PhD student and I work up on the medical campus, as Lance was saying earlier. My research is focused in orthopedic research and engineering. So if you have any questions about that, I can give you my email at the end. But I came from California, so if any Californians are in here, you can make the trek over. I went to UC Davis for undergrad, which you can see in that photo and I'm repping right now. But I currently serve as the president for GoBME, which is the graduate organization for biomedical engineers. You can go to the next slide, Jody. So this is my board. Oh, it doesn't look like, okay, there we go. Okay, it's updated. This is my board. It's a mix of master's students and PhD students, all in different years. We have a lot of different positions focused on different things, which is how we kind of plan our events. So people like the external vice president are focused on planning events with other organizations in the engineering department. So last night, if my voice is a little raspy, we had a karaoke event with the mechanical engineers, which was great. So we do focus on planning lots of social events that allow you to intermingle within the department, but also get to interact with other engineers, which is one of the greatest parts of being at Columbia. I feel like outside of BME, the other departments are pretty integrated as well too. We do things like outreach events. Jody, you can also go to the next slide. I can show some of the events. We do things like outreach events as well. So you can see up in the top right, we had a park cleanup this summer. We often volunteer at Girls Science Day, which is happening this Saturday, where a bunch of middle school aged girls come and learn about a bunch of different science topics and experiments. It's really fun, really rewarding. So we get to help plan an experiment for that every year. And then we also try and do fellowship like NSF GRFP or qualifying exam prep through the organization. But I would say the general focus is to bring social events to the student community so that you can get to know people and feel more integrated into the community where you're not just doing research in class all the time. That's definitely our central goal. You can go to the next slide. Yeah. And so these are just some of the other events. We also do intramurals. And yeah, I feel like that's mostly it. But if you want to connect with us, we have our Instagram QR code up on the next slide, I believe. And all the emails. So if you want to email the GoBME email with questions, you're more than welcome to, or message us on Instagram. That's totally fine. But hoping to see you in February. Thanks.
Now I'll pass it on to Natasha Stanislaus, the Graduate Admissions Officer.
Hello, hello. Good morning from New York City. As indicated, yes, I am part of the Office of Graduate Admissions. Excited to tell you a little bit more about the application process itself today. So here's a little bit about our deadlines. Now, if for some reason, after all the amazing information you heard, you're still considering more than one department at Columbia Engineering, it is important to note that different departments have different deadlines for the application. Of course, when it comes to biomedical engineering, the deadline for any spring entry, so if you're looking to join us in January, the deadline was October 15th, but for the fall, if you're looking to start in fall of 2025. The MS PhD track or PhD application would be due by December 15th. And then for the MS program for biomedical specifically, the deadline is February 15th. Now, my advice to you, of course, is to work in advance of these deadlines. Consider that there are multiple components. You certainly want to make sure that your recommendation letters, transcripts, all any additional materials are part of that application in advance. And so now on this next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about the application requirements themselves. The GRE is optional this year. We are taking it year by year as a school. So my advice is that if you've taken the GRE, or if you've taken a practice test and you've done particularly well, by all means, please share that with the department. I'm sure the committee would love to see that. But if you're not as confident in your GRE score, or if you haven't taken it, there's no disadvantage to not submitting it. Depending on the country that you earned your bachelor's or will earn your bachelor's, you may be required to take the TOEFL, IELTS, Duolingo, or PTE academic exams for English proficiency. We do not have any cutoff scores, but we do have strong recommendations listed on our website to, again, make sure that you're able to communicate with your peers, your colleagues, and faculty around you. There is an online application where you enter all your details and materials, and there is an associated fee for submitting that application. We do require all university transcripts as part of your admissions process. We require recommendation letters. We'd love to hear from faculty, but also any current or previous supervisors or managers at any internships or research positions are helpful as well. We do require a personal statement, and there is a video interview for our MS applicants. Here's a little bit of insight into the funding and financial planning, just because while this is intended to be more for our PhD students or for those on the MS PhD track, some students do ask, what's the difference between that or our Masters of Science program? So unilaterally, the Masters of Science programs are self-funded. So students are either taking out loans or using their savings or working with their employer to sponsor their degree. Perhaps they pursued a fellowship like the GEM Fellowship to do so. And external funding opportunities are highly recommended. You're also not necessarily provided with a teaching assistantship or a research assistantship prior to enrollment. But for those of you on the MS PhD or PhD track, you're actually fully funded through that research or teaching assistantship that you're pursuing. That includes like a stipend, tuition, health insurance, facilities fees. You should still pursue external funding. I'll be able to share a link in the chat in case I believe our website has just been updated, so that link may not be working. But there's a lot of great information on our website about pursuing fellowships and funding opportunities. Regardless of what degree you're applying to, you want to make sure that, again, you're putting all your ducks in a row and having as many resources as possible to pursue your degree. And I do see a quick question in the chat that I'll answer now. When it comes to your transcripts, you're able to pursue to submit your in-progress transcripts and your unofficial transcripts, and then of course, if offered admission, we'll need the final and official forms of those transcripts in case that's not clear. But with that, I'll talk a little bit about engineering student affairs. These are our colleagues that put together all sorts of ways from the start of your program to commencement and beyond, opportunities for you to be in community with one another. So here's a little snapshot of some of those opportunities. A lot on campus, but there's also ways off campus that they interact with one another. And here's just a short list of some of the engineering student organizations outside of biomedical engineering. So in my experience, I've seen a lot of students be really involved in their departments, and I think that's an amazing and wonderful thing. And the departments are also interacting sometimes with one another or other groups that may not be focused specifically on the academic area of interest. They might be more aligned with the social or personal identities of students. So I think the department that you apply to, the department you're enrolled in, is kind of like your home base, and then you're able to expand out into other engineering student organizations. So on this next slide, you'll be able to see some of those affinity student organizations. I always shout out Core Squared. The Coalition on Race and Ethnicity in Engineering has actually since expanded to any group that is considered underrepresented by major kind of organizations. So within engineering, if you're a first-gen college student, first-gen American, women, queer, kind of all the other groups that exist already through other affinity groups, they kind of come together on courseware. But again, it's all to the opportunity to provide you with a community within engineering. And also, these groups do organize with other groups throughout the university. So, as an example, the National Society of Black Engineers, our engineering graduate student council, I believe they did support the business school's African Business Conference this past year, right? So, those are opportunities of ways to interact with one another throughout the university. And then on this next slide, a little bit about engineering wellness. This is important to us. This is still part of the engineering student affairs umbrella. In addition to providing you these opportunities to be in community with one another, making sure that you are the best you can be throughout your program. You cannot pour from an empty cup. And so being able to make sure that there are seminars, sessions, trainings, events, fun giveaways in the cafeteria for you to be thinking about your grad life and how to best manage it, everything from emotional and relational well-being to physical and intellectual well-being. Again, as our students tend to be internally competitive more than externally competitive, we want to make sure that students are supported throughout their graduate experience and take these tools with them throughout their academic and professional careers. And then on this next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about those community building events. This is right outside of a major stadium in New York City. Often students ask, like, okay, I'm studying in New York, but how do I begin to even think about exploring New York? Where do I start? And Engineering Student Affairs will put together opportunities for students to be able to attend the US Open or attend a great, maybe a basketball game or be able to see the Statue of Liberty, especially if you've never seen it before, all these kind of free or discounted opportunities to explore the program with your friends in the city around you. Next question. And then there are also graduate student socials that you're able to participate in as well. I'm sorry, I'm seeing some questions in the chat as well. It's a little bit distracting, but the graduate student socials, as you can see from the pictures here, some major New York City landmarks. I think that's Yankee Stadium. Hopefully that's Yankee Stadium, not Met Stadium. But again, just great opportunities for you to be able to see New York City with your friends and peers that are really discounted or completely free. And so that's it. You're welcome to, if you haven't already, check out the application. I do think sometimes by opening the application, you're able to self-answer a number of questions on your own. The email address here is the correct email address for the graduate admissions office. So depending on the question, if it's not specific to biomedical engineering specifically, it's okay for it to come to the admissions office. We are happy to help. I do see that there's some questions in the Q&A section as well as in the chat. So really quickly, in case it wasn't clear, there is a MS PhD track and a separate standalone PhD application. It's all in the same system, of course, but at Columbia Engineering, for all of our academic departments, if you do not have a master's and would like to pursue a PhD, you're able to pursue it through the MS PhD track. So that's all departments except for computer science, which is a different story. So if you have a master's or will have a master's by the time your program starts, you should be applying to the standalone PhD program. If you're coming out of a bachelor's program, or if you will not have a master's or do not want a master's before you start your PhD at Columbia Engineering, you should be pursuing the MS PhD track in which you're considered and treated like a PhD student, except you are, of course, taking MS courses to start. And so I hope that that helps provide some clarification in terms of which program you're particularly applying for. But in the application, it's more or less the same. We just explicitly ask, will you have a master's before you start? And then if not, the system itself will actually tell you that you should be applying for the MS PhD program. So hopefully that helps. But if you have any other questions, I will be here to kind of chime into either the webinar chat or the Q&A, wherever you're asking your questions. I know a number of questions have been answered already by, Jody and the department because they're amazing. So be sure to comb through that Q&A section to see if your question was already answered. But I'm happy to stick around and answer any additional questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Natasha. Please follow us on social media. And now we'll go to the Q&A questions portion of the seminar. There's a lot of questions.
I sent this in the chat, but if students have future questions, can you put them in the Q&A box? It's just a little bit easier for us to see them and figure out which ones we've answered. Also, some of the questions in the chat have been answered in the Q&A box. If you can't find it, then you can put them in the chat, but it should be on the bottom panel next to the share button, or yeah, on the bottom panel of Zoom.
There are a bunch of questions that are about reaching out to faculty in advance. Maybe I should answer that one here. It's a great idea to do that. There's only so much we can fit in our webpage and what you see in our publication list and things like this. It really does help to figure out whether we're a fit for you and likewise. So reach out in advance. Now is a good time to do that. We are now thinking about what's going to be happening during the application process and how many people are we going to be bringing into our laboratory. We are a direct match admissions process. So we're looking to, instead of doing rotations when someone comes in, start research, hit the ground running in that laboratory. So reaching out in advance, expressing your interests, finding out what directions is the laboratory going to go into. These are great ways to help focus your research and also just become more familiar with our program. It's not mandatory, and faculty do have varying degrees of responsiveness to emails, so keep trying. And again, it's not mandatory to actually have that conversation before. Quite often this happens after we see the full application. I hope that answers some of the questions. I guess follow up on that. There was a question about someone in the meeting here had contacted new faculty who's not on that list yet. Yeah, our website does take some time to catch up. Please keep in contact with them. Google is quite often better at finding email addresses than our website, honestly. Keep in contact with them. Just keep the discussion going. They don't have to be on that website to have that conversation start.
There's a question about housing I can address. So there is actually student housing provided by Columbia for PhD students. Correct me if I'm wrong, it's guaranteed, but for master, so if you're on the MS PhD track, you're still considered a PhD student for applying for housing. I was MS PhD. So there's a lot of housing near campus, which is great, and it's usually not as expensive as other places in New York. I've had a great time living in Columbia housing. I don't anticipate leaving, so that tells you anything. But yeah, it's rent controlled, so the increases in rent throughout the years aren't as high in Columbia housing. But it's still New York, so you take what you can get. But yeah, it's nice housing and it's near campus, which is great.
There were a couple of questions in there about which department to apply to, and I guess on a related question, there was a question on neural imaging, like which is that part of the program. To navigate that, I would suggest what you'd want to do is identify who you would be working for. They're typically going to be associated with a specific department, and as much as we'd love to have you join BME, if their home department is a different department, that may be more appropriate for that. Reach out to them, find out how they normally run their students. We do have the situation where a student in BME is working in a laboratory for a faculty who's outside of BME, like in mechanical engineering. In those cases, check if that faculty, the mechanical engineering faculty, is an affiliate of biomedical engineering. That will be on their website, or they can tell you about that. In that case, we can do the arrangement if BME is indeed more appropriate for your program we can do an arrangement where we're co-advised in that situation. But again, most typically it's going to be in the department of the faculty that you'd like to work for. So this is the reason to reach out in advance. They're going to know the program that they're mainly associated with. As far as neuroengineering, we got some fantastic people in this. Paul Shada, Chi Wang, Josh Jacobs, um, all doing fantastic work in this. Grace McElveen is doing MRI elastography. Didn't know you could do that. It's very cool. They're all in BME. They would be the main appointment. Please check out their profiles and what they're working on. Very cool stuff.
Jody, there's some interview weekend questions. I don't know if you want to answer those. Just like when is it? What happens during it?
Right, sure. So interview weekend is when we bring the selected students that faculty are interested in for interviews. Usually it's going to be February 12th to the 15th this year. So if you're selected for an interview, you'll come to Columbia, or if virtual, if you're overseas or international. Faculty meet with at least 3 students, and you interview at least 3 faculty members. And then afterwards, it's a match-based system with the faculty and the student.
I'm seeing a couple other questions about interview weekend. I would say like interview weekend is important, but get through the application right now. That's more important. Reach out to faculty that you're interested in. Um, and I feel like interview weekend is great because you get to meet the faculty face to face. Hopefully, if you've gone in contact with them and they've had time to meet with you, you've already spoken to them once. I personally hadn't spoken to any of the faculty before interview weekend. It was also COVID and kind of a crazy time. But it's I would focus on that first and like getting through the application process. Interview wise, the interviews are 30-minute interviews with the faculty. It's really meant to be more, at least in my opinion, of a conversation than anything to see how you fit, because at that point they've already looked at your application. They know that you are going to be a good fit in their lab, research wise, intellectually, but they don't really know who you are as a person. So I think focusing interviews on like, sure, talk about science, but talk about what you're passionate about, and not don't make it feel like it's like they're drilling you with questions or vice versa. It should be a conversation. And I think one of the most rewarding parts of interview weekend is actually getting to meet the students in the labs. And Lance had said you should reach out to the PIs. If you can't get in contact with a PI, it never hurts to reach out to a grad student to ask about the interview week, the application process, the interview process. I find that you get a much better understanding of lab culture and life as a student talking to the actual students. So that's like my advice coming from a grad student here. I guess I can talk about stipend a little bit too. I see someone's answering, but I'm also living on PhD stipend. With Columbia housing, I would say I live like pretty comfortably here. Am I saving a ton of money? No, but that's also a choice I'm making. But I don't have a problem. Like I'm not usually stressed about how much money I have. I can go out with my friends, I can buy groceries, I can pay my rent. So it's you can survive. Like the stipend is like livable in my opinion. There's another question about advisors. Sorry, I just don't feel like typing. It's too silent. I need to fill the silence. Um, but identifying potential advisors that you want to work with is, I think, required before you apply because you list PIs that you would like to work with. And obviously, you want to start identifying like what area you want to work in, and that could also be the deciding factor between applying to mechanical versus biomedical, like someone had asked about. So know who or like what you're interested in, but for interview weekend, you might not get matched with those exact PIs. They could not be taking students, things like that. But having a few people identified ahead of time is good. You don't want to box yourself into just one person. So give yourself a little bit of wiggle room.
Yeah, just to add to that, certainly more than one. I mean, for for the sake of finding a match for the program, anywhere you're looking, I would really suggest that you identify 2, 3 faculty that you would like to work for, and expand a little bit beyond that. It helps us focus how we're looking at the applications, like in a particular area, if not a particular laboratory. So not everybody, not one, some kind of balance in which you're comfortable. Would I be willing to work in that laboratory based on what I know? Because I mean, it's 5 years, but it does start to define you scientifically and career-wise. So you do want to be comfortable with that choice. A question came up just now on internships during PhD. This is something that more and more students are doing. It can be a great idea. Um, my laboratory works on immune engineering growing T cells, largely in the context of CAR T therapy. Um, and my students have started doing these mostly during the summer period, uh, and they have been extremely useful. One got an internship with Takara Bio, which is big in sort of the cell manufacturing realm. They're big in many realms, but cell manufacturing is one of theirs. And the student came back with a lot more knowledge that really helped build out their thesis and focus their research. So they can be very useful, and they are possible. They're not required though.
There's more questions about different math types of masters or BSs. I don't have the answers to those. I don't know if you're seeing those questions like MEng, MSTP, other stuff. While you're maybe looking up those questions, I can answer the most recent question. What do I like about best about Columbia in general? Well, I like specifically living in the city. It's really nice. It's also a great location. It's nice to be separated from the frenzy of Manhattan. When you come here, if you've never been, it's a lot quieter up where we live, which makes it good for focusing. But what I do really love is the BME department. I mean, we're lucky to be in a department that's so tight knit. I've had the privilege of working with many different staff members and faculty, and it's so refreshing to be able to interact with faculty specifically within and outside of research spaces. I'm part of the DEI committee as well, and the faculty are pretty involved in that, and it's really nice to have that connect outside of like, are we going to collaborate and do research together? I think that's great. And I feel like everyone here is pretty accessible and friendly. I mean, coming from California, it was a little daunting coming here because, my parents have been here. They're like, oh, like New Yorkers are so hard, but everyone here is so wonderful. Like I have no complaints about the people that, keep the BME department running. It's great.
just wanted to agree with that from the faculty point of view as well. I mean, this is kind of what we pride ourselves on, and why we quite often call it the BME family. Students, researchers in the laboratory talk to each other, share ideas. Um, we don't really have a lot of competition between the labs to the point where we got to keep quiet and things. Students share ideas, they get into debates about stuff, and then go out and celebrate afterwards still. This is New York. Everyone's crammed together, and the good parts of that are you share ideas. You can go talk to people. When I came here, I was, I now work on immune engineering, but when I came here, I was working on neural engineering. Um, and it's through the interactions with different individual, different researchers, different groups, different physicians even, that, well, I made a change from one of the most difficult changes from neuro to immuno, if you know those communities. Successfully made that transition because of the kind of interactions that happen here. It's a place where ideas come at the interfaces of fields. It's really the coolest stuff comes from these kind of interactions, walking in the hallways, talking to people. And if that energizes you, I think we're the program for you.
Also, it's like so easy to get involved. Like if you like if you were an undergrad or in high school and getting involved in organizations, like it's so easy to put yourself out there and do that. And I think that's also one of the most beneficial things. Like I personally can't just be all school. I need like to be able to plan events and interact socially with my peers. And so there's really a lot of places to be able to do that at Columbia, which is also great. Someone asked about my career choices, which is really stressful question for a third year PhD student. Um, I was going to answer in the chat, but I can speak about it. So when I came into my PhD, academia was definitely the goal. It definitely fluctuates every day for me. I love teaching, so I love the TA requirement. I enjoy because I love being a TA. So I want to teach at some point, but I don't know if that means I want to like run a lab and teach, or if I want to work in industry and somehow teach on the side, or just teach alone. I don't know. But I feel like I have a good support system regardless of what I want to do, which I think is really important in finding a PI that's not trying to force you into like one specific direction. So I feel like the people around me are like open to everything. There's a lot of people I feel like people at Columbia kind of go everywhere. Like it's not academic heavy. There's people that go into consulting, people that go into industry. So you have outlets around you that will help you figure out where you need to go and give you the resources to help you with that. And there also is like a decent, at least in the BME department, there's a decent alumni connection, or there's a lot of alumni connects that have specific career paths that you could get in contact with. We also try and hold a panel of an alum panel at some point every year um, to discuss different career options. But in short, I don't know. We'll see. Ask me in 3 years. For the GRE, I was also going to type and answer this. If it's a requirement for other schools, I don't know how like the rest of the panel feels, but if it's a requirement for other schools, I would say take it, obviously. If it's not a requirement, I don't think it's that needed. The test like doesn't really, in my opinion, do that much for engineers. Like the math is like algebra 2, which obviously you're probably going to be doing a little bit more than that here, and you already have. I took it because it was required at one of my schools, but I didn't end up submitting it anywhere except for that school. And like I was fine. So I think it depends on if you like want to add to your application package. Maybe you want to support your GPA a little bit more with a good score on the GRE. That's when I would take it. But if you feel like your GPA is like high enough, meeting requirements, your research experience is good, I don't know how necessary it is. Lance, I see you're unmuted. You probably have a better take on that than I do.
Not much more to add to that. I mean, really, if it helps, I mean, we do a holistic kind of application review. And the goal of that is to let each applicant kind of emphasize where their strengths are. And you recognize that, quite often you may not have those opportunities to be like in a research laboratory in your undergraduate studies and things like this, or where you currently are. And we don't have too many other measures aside from that. The GRE could be one of those. So lead with what your strengths are, lead with what you're proud of doing. Um, uh, Otherwise, and, what Gigi's saying is quite on target. Yeah, the related question on there, what are important factors in accepting a student? Um, yeah, this is a direct match program. Faculty have a wide range of balancing that holistic application approach. Um, uh, I think in talking with some of my colleagues and myself, can you discuss the research? We understand part of being a student is learning the field. But from wherever you are in that process, can you, in that short, unfortunately short 30-minute time with us during the interview or any discussions before that, can we engage in the discussion about the research, where it's going, details about it? Are you showing an understanding of what you've done as well? When you have your accomplishments listed in the application, show off the ones you're really proud of, talk about them. That kind of passion and understanding and sort of conceptualization of the whole field, in my opinion, this is what goes a long way in seeing, do we have a good match for the next 5 years? Along that same line, there was a question, how long does it take on the track and the direct to PhD as well? Most of our students take 5 to 6 years to finish. We aim for 5, sometimes it takes a little bit longer. COVID kind of giving us new frontiers in that in the past years. But typically it's 5 to 6 years. And it seems to be about equal for the MS PhD and the PhD.
Someone asked about, there's still some like direct match questions, I believe. But I see this most recent question. If you don't contact professors before you apply, I didn't. Like that's not gonna affect how you're accepted. I mean, it might based on like if the PI's met with you or not, but you're still gonna be accepted, go through interview weekend and be accepted by a PI. It's not like by the committee. So if you get to interview weekend, that means that enough people looked at your application and want you there. And then when you interview, you can like meet with people. But you also find out you're going to interview weekend obviously before you go. So if you find out your schedule and you want to get in contact with those PIs before you go, that's also an option. Hopefully that helps. And then someone asked about, I think, cohort size. Um, so the cohort size does depend on how many students the PIs are taking. I would say generally it's around 30 people. I think mine is like 32. I think the most recent was a little bit bigger. So it depends on, yeah, how many, it's basically like funding dependent for like specific PIs.
Yeah, maybe I'll just build on that and answer the question here. The question about if a particular faculty is taking new students, best to reach out to that faculty directly. Funding is something that is always changing. Um, uh, right now, we have sort of an idea of how many people we'll be able to support for next fall. We're thinking about it and things, but it's very much individual PI driven. We don't really tell each other, hey, I'm going to be hiring many people. You'll sometimes see ads for that and things, but we don't really have like a central way of knowing who's going to be recruiting at this time. It'll become much clearer as the end of the year and beginning of next year kind of roll around. But reach out to them in advance. Email is the best way to do that. Those can be found on our website, or again, just by Google it, you can get the email. Or if you can't find it, please email me and I can help get you in contact with them.
Jody, do you know about this MSTP application? It's come up a couple times, I think, it's like MD, PhD, I believe. I don't know if you know or if you could direct them to someone that might have answers to their questions.
An MD, PhD, you have to contact the medical school first and apply there first and get accepted.
After the med school acceptance, how does the PhD portion begin? Do they apply just like a PhD student, or do you know how that process works? That seems to be more of the question.
I'm not familiar with that process.
Okay.
It is run by the medical school, as, I mean, for the joint MD PhD program. I mean, applications are processed through the medical school. As part of that, who will you be working for in the PhD? That is part of the process, because we want to be sure there's a fit there as well, right? So typically what happens is you go through the medical school application process, and as part of that, you interview with a couple of faculty who you're interested in. So you would list like BME faculty on your application, and we would be involved in the application visit. Um, Again, to see pretty much like the PhD program, is there a fit? Do you like us? This kind of a thing. And then that all feeds back into admissions in the MD PhD program as run by the medical school.
Thank you. Question about doing a PhD in Manhattan. I grew up in suburban California. I went to Davis, which is like college town suburbia. Um, I am very happy I moved to Manhattan. I think it's not necessarily for everyone, but because we live like removed from the overwhelming bits of Manhattan, I think it makes it a lot easier to like stay focused and grounded at the school. But it is also very easy to sorry, there's like a lot of construction happening behind me. I don't know if you can hear that, but it is also very easy to like get downtown, get to areas where you might have friends staying that maybe aren't at Columbia. Do I get distracted sometimes? Yeah, but I personally am like happy that I am in a place where I can do things on the weekends and I'm not stuck in like my apartment all weekend. I think it can get overwhelming, but only if you really let it get to you. If you are able to separate it out, it's not that hard. But it does depend on like the kind of person you are. And I think that's something, if you get to come for interview weekend, you can kind of analyze and assess a little bit more, being in the city and like trying to handle interviews and all those kinds of things. I think immersing yourself here and visiting does help a lot to figure that out. Um, do you know about Masters of Engineering versus Masters Science for applications, Jody, if they have a Masters Engineering? Should they apply just for PhD?
They should apply for PhD.
Okay. And then someone asked about, they have a UK BSc, MSc. It's like the top questions in the Q&A. I don't know if you've seen that before, but I don't know if you know if that's PhD or MS PhD.
Maybe Natasha knows. I'm not familiar with that.
Mm. Whoever sent that question, maybe emailing the grad admissions email. Oh, okay, she's writing an answer. Never mind.
Okay. It's 11:02 right now, just for time purposes that we might conclude our info session. If students have more questions, they can feel free to email us at bme@columbia.edu or reach out to us directly, and we'll be able to assist you.
I'm gonna answer these. Is it okay if I answer these last two questions that came up for me?
Sure, no problem.
Yeah, we do have undergrads in my lab. I work with an undergrad right now, so it is typical. I mean, again, it just depends on the lab that you're in. And if you're PI, like if you feel like you have the space to do that, but hopefully you have a PI that's very open to you mentoring a student because I think that's a very valuable part of research. So I say typically a lot of labs have at least one or two undergrads. Sometimes they take in master students that are only going to be around for a year. We had that in our lab too. And then apartment wise, you can get a studio or a one bed through Columbia Housing. I live with two roommates. That was a choice. So it just depends on like how much money you're willing to spend versus like what's available. But yeah. Okay, I'm done.
Sorry. Thank you everyone for joining us for our info session today. Feel free to email us with any questions that you might have. We look forward to reviewing your application in the future.